what can Indigenous women in Canada do to press for progress in your community, in Canada, or globally?
Matali Ukaliuyunga. My name is Matali Ukalip, and I'm happy to join this panel with our esteemed moderator, MC, and fellow panelists from Iqaluit Nunavut. For those of you who don't know where that is or do, this is the map of Canada, and I'm sitting at my desk here in Iqaluit. I was actually very worried that I wasn't going to be able to participate because we have very limited bandwidth connectivity, despite it being an essential service prescribed by the Government of Canada. So I'm very pleased that I could join you today. Paula, thank you very much for that question. Whenever people ask questions about women, in particular about Inuit women, I always have a smile because in my language, Inuktitut, that Annie opened today's panel discussion with, there is not really a distinction between he and she in our language. Like there isn't a gender necessarily, like a term that differentiates that specifically, and that's a reflection of how our Inuit culture is. Very inclusive, very respectful of the different roles and responsibilities that our community members have in a family, in the community, and as a society, really. And that's what makes me so, one of the reasons that makes me so proud to be a Inuk. Because we each have an important role to play in our respective settings. So whether I'm here at my office, which is a small Inuit language institute led by a powerful Inuk woman, or whether I am an Annaleak, which means that I was like a midwife to the birth of a new baby, and the responsibility that we have together in our own cultural traditions that have come from generations before us. But really, when it comes to gender parity, I've just listed a few examples of how amazing Inuit culture fosters women. It's very important for us to be cognizant of and respectful of the fact that we are in a situation where we're living in our homeland within Canada, where we suffer from quite a bit of inequity when it comes to basic human rights, which impacts the roles and responsibilities today in 2018 when it comes to our women. And so, and I think that that might be writ large across the different Indigenous nations, like First Nations and Métis. We may be living in a similar situation. So before we can talk about how we can reach gender parity, for example, we have to talk about, I think we have to talk about how we can reach equity in Canada. So that includes our, you know, when it comes to us, our life expectancy, something very simple to start out with. The average life expectancy for a Inuk in Inuit Nunangat is 70.8, whereas for the fellow Canadians, it's 80.6. So not only are we dying younger, we're also dying faster by suicide. And that's inextricably tied with our history, having been joining this country for the purpose of Canadian sovereignty, because as Paulette said, despite us only being 4% of the composition of Indigenous population in Canada, we amass 1/5 of Canada's landmass, and that's for a reason, really, so that Canada can claim our part of our land as its country for their own purposes. Now, my issue is that the lack of investment and support for us as Canadians equates to such things as our life expectancy, the fact that we, 39% of us live in crowded homes versus 4% of other Canadians, and despite the fact that here in Nunavut, 7 out of 10 of us are hungry. I mean, that those predetermined social realities influence how women can play the role that they can play and succeed. And as women are the backbone to our society, having to deal with these realities on a day-to-day basis, I think I can be very happy and proud to say I still see a lot of women practicing Inuit traditions, like working with our skins, like traditional child rearing, to ensure that our beautiful cultural elements and knowledge are passed on from generation to generation, and that our language continues to thrive. And I just commend the Inuit women who have come before my generation and the Inuit women in my generation who prioritize those important areas of our language, our culture, and our overall well-being, despite the social inequities that we face here in Canada.
All right. Thank you very, very much for those comments, Matali.